Obviously, this World Cup started sometime during the last century, so you may have forgotten how we got here. India have, let me just check my notes, not lost a game yet, and of course they already have 2 titles. While New Zealand lost a load in this tournament, and are trying to work out if they're here just because it's a semi-final or if they have a realistic chance of finally winning a World Cup. This video is brought to you by Wicket Cricket Manager. This show was made by HCLTech, a company that believes in partnerships so much you can read their name on the Australian shirt. This show leans in hard on data and technology, so we are proud to work with HCLTech, leaders in their field. India started off magnificently with the ball against Australia, with Bumrah right up front. But it was the spinners, Jadeja, Kuldeep and Ashwin, you will not hear his name a lot more after this, who completely slaughtered Australia, allowing them to set a target of exactly 200. But India lost 3 wickets for basically nothing before a crucial partnership between Virat Kohli and KL Rahul weathered the storm. So somehow it ended up being a fairly comfortable chase after a bit of a shock at the start. Afghanistan made the most runs by any team against India this tournament. Shout out Afghanistan. But India still had them 63 for 3 when Shahidi and Omarzai came together for a solid partnership. Bumrah would end up with 4 for 39, and the rest of the quicks actually went for some runs, and the spinners were quite frugal in this game. But Rohit Sharma meant that Afghanistan were never actually in this match in the second innings. He scored the then fastest 100 by an Indian batter in World Cups, and he kept attacking all the way through his innings, especially against Rashid Khan. Ishan Kishan and Virat Kohli also got some runs in as India won easily. For all the pressure talk, Pakistan started really well against India. They were 155 for 2. They were also 191 all out. The middle overs bowling from the Indians was extraordinary to be able to pull this game back. Each of the 5 bowlers, except for Shardul, who wasn't used much and isn't mentioned much anymore, chipped in with 2 wickets each. Once again, Rohit Sharma went hard up top, and his innings meant that the game was basically over by the end of the power play. This game mattered because Hardik Pandya was injured. And this game also mattered because it was our first Virat Kohli impersonation of Chris Harris. The bigger question was what it would mean for them going forward. But in this game, Bumrah was once again brilliant. Siraj took a couple of wickets, and the spinners made sure it was an under par total on a very flat wicket. Another regulation chase for India. Rohit did his thing in the power play. Shubman Gill got his first World Cup 50, and the game had more than enough time for Virat to play for his 100. So Hardik's injury meant that him and Shardul were replaced by Sky and Shami. And instantly the seamer took a fifer. He took wickets in all phases of the game, best at the end when he managed to take wickets but also stop New Zealand from kicking on. The only other interesting thing here was that Daryl Mitchell put a lot of pressure on Kuldeep Yadav. And sorry if this sounds like copy-paste, but Rohit was a force at the top again. Virat almost made a ton. And most importantly though, India did lose wickets in this game. In fact, they lost the magic number of 6. And it's fair to say that India were probably challenged the most in this game, but Jadeja's form came back and got them home. Finally, India batted first in this tournament, but they didn't actually bat particularly well. Woakes got a couple of wickets and Willie chipped in as well. And so it was Rohit Sharma, yes, again, who demonstrated his exceptional skill, batting in a completely different manner. It was one of those knocks where it's like Rohit brings his own pitch. But he had a good partnership with KL Rahul, and also Sky made some important runs in the end of what was a low-scoring encounter. Jasprit Bumrah beheaded the England batting lineup, but it was Mohammad Shami who got all the press for what he did to Ben Stokes. Very quickly, England were 52 for 5, and game over. Rohit Sharma finally failed. Stop the presses. Virat Kohli and Shubman Gill batted very well in a classic ODI tempo and looked all set to get their hundreds but didn't quite get there. Shreyas Iyer got some much needed runs and Jadeja hit a few at the death. The Indian pace juggernaut was just incredible in this game. They bowled outstanding lines and made us wonder if this is India's best bowling unit in a World Cup, and had people like me looking up if they were the best bowling unit ever in terms of average. Sri Lanka, for the second time, didn't actually pass 50 against them. It was very noticeable that India continued to attack against South Africa, who were trying to take wickets against them in the power play. Rohit made them pay for bad balls, Gill got a start, but Maharaj bowled an incredible one to him. It was also worth noting in this innings that Virat went slower than perhaps you would expect him to, but scoring an above par total against a side which is not known for chasing might have been the aim. In this case, South Africa chose not to chase at all, and Jadeja picked up a lot of wickets. All you need to know about this game is that Virat and Rohit took wickets. So what have we learned about India? Their batting is capable at scoring fast and also above par score. They have a weak number 8, but they don't lose enough wickets for it to ever be an issue. And their bowling is even better than we thought it was going to be. Their biggest chance of losing, outside of like a freak performance or heavily weighted toss, is a team that just chips away and takes wickets all the way against them, or one of their bowlers rolling an ankle. What about New Zealand? Well, they went into the World Cup opener with just 3 frontline bowlers. In fact, they only really used 2 batters in this game. It was a very odd game. But New Zealand still took wickets. We saw Trent Bolt's knuckleballs, and Henry took a couple, and Santner kept things very tight. But it was Glenn Phillips who probably saved the day with his surprising wickets. Playing in their first World Cup, Rachin Ravindra and Devon Conway made an absolute mockery out of that target, scoring it 8 runs and over. This match, New Zealand batted first, and their entire top 5 chipped in with valuable contributions. Rachin was impressive once again. Santner also scored quite quickly at the death, taking New Zealand to a 300-plus score in the first innings. Despite Ackerman making some runs, the Dutch were always restricted, and eventually Santner took over to take a 5-wicket haul. In this one, they started pretty well with the ball, reducing Bangladesh to 56 for 4. Shakib, Mushfiqur, and then later Mahmudullah would add some runs to get it to an okay total. But Lockie had a great game here, a massive upgrade from how he had been bowling. He looked fast, short, and brutal. Bolt and Henry also took wickets, and no one could score off Santner in another game. Chasing 246, Conway and Williamson set the tone on a slow Chepauk wicket. Daryl Mitchell gave them a net run rate boost with his 89. But there was an issue, because after somehow overcoming his knee injury, Williamson comes back, bats quite well, and then gets a fractured thumb from a wayward throw. Will Young batted pretty well for his half-century with some proper shots against spin. New Zealand were in a comfortable position of 109 for 1. 9 balls later, they're 110 for 4. But in this game, the lower order did step up. Glenn Phillips and Tom Latham, then with a little bit of hitting from Mark Chapman later on. Bolt and Henry dismissed the openers in the first 6 overs, so Afghanistan never really recovered from that. And again, we saw Lockie Ferguson bowl short and took middle overs wickets. And Santner had another good game. Despite 2 early blows, Daryl Mitchell and Rachin Ravindra put together an outstanding display with the bat against the Indians. They attacked Kuldeep Yadav and got themselves into a position where the team could have kicked on. But Shami bowled an outstanding spell at the end, and it did restrict them a little bit. When Bolt and Henry didn't take early wickets, it looked like the Indian openers were going to close this game down. But Santner did very well in those middle overs again, and the Pacers took a lot of wickets, despite going for a few runs. They certainly posed a proper challenge to India because of the amount of wickets they got, but they still lost this game pretty comfortably. This match was probably the worst start they could have imagined. Travis Head, in his first game of the tournament, and David Warner came out all guns blazing. And guess who broke their 175 partnership? Glenn fucking Phillips. Of course he did. And not only that, again, he was fantastic. New Zealand only come into this tournament with 4 frontline bowlers, and Glenn Phillips stood up again and again. And in this game, he went at 3.7 runs over his full 10, and he took the wickets of Head, Warner, and Smith. But it was still a massive total. Rachin Ravindra was the big story here, as he scored with a 130 strike rate to make the Kiwis actually have a chance. And no one else really made a lot of runs, but a lot of players chipped it around. And then Neesham was incredible at the end with a 58 off 39 balls, but he couldn't quite get it over the line. So it was a loss, but it was still a great chase and a loss. This was probably the only game in the tournament where they were completely outplayed. Bolt got Bavuma in the power play, and that was the best news that New Zealand would have for a very long time in this game. QDK and Rassi notched up hundreds, Miller made some runs at the end, it was a big score, and New Zealand never looked like a threat with the ball, either defensively or when attacking. Marco Jansen got a couple of wickets at the top, and New Zealand never really recovered from that. Rabada and Kotsia took wickets in the middle, and Maharaj bowled well at the tail. Glenn Phillips would end up scoring a nice 50 ball 60. So that meant that they had 3 losses in 3 games, but all against good teams. I think the bigger issue was they were in the game against India and certainly had a chance of winning against Australia. They were not in that match against South Africa. This was just a crazy-ass game. Rachin Ravindra scored his 3rd 100. Kane Williamson just missed out on 1 after somehow coming back from that injury again really quickly. Mitchell, Chapman, Phillips, Santner all played quick cameos in the final 15 overs, and New Zealand made over 400. But Pakistan won the game without even having to score that many. Thank you, rain. Of course, it took a phenomenal innings from Fakhar Zaman to keep them alive with the DLS equation. Southee was probably the only bowler who was a bit economical in this innings. He was in for Henry. As we now know, Henry was on his way home. Now, without rain, the predictors gave Pakistan an 18% chance, which is fair considering it's not actually that easy to chase 400 in ODI cricket, even if it was at Chinnaswamy. So if the game went the full overs, chances are Pakistan would have lost. But instead, what actually happened was New Zealand lost 4 in a row, and it meant that their hold on the semi-final spot slipped. This was the sort of win you expect from New Zealand. Bolt took early wickets, even though Pereira actually took Southee down. Santner and Ferguson handled the middle overs again. This time, Ratchin took some wickets, and the batters finished this one off fairly easily. But Sri Lanka's best chance in this game was always going to be rain. So what of New Zealand? If India and Australia are two of the best three teams at least, well, didn't New Zealand push both of them? But if you look at it another way, didn't New Zealand just beat all the bad teams and lost to all the good teams and Pakistan? And what is New Zealand better at than India? Maybe the number 8 batting position? India have more frontline bowlers, better seam, and way better spin. When you look at the batting, India is more explosive and consistent. However, New Zealand actually played pretty well against India. So it's not like an upset couldn't happen, but India should be the massive favourites.